Obviously, the great state of Arizona is going to play a very, very critical role in electing, hopefully, Donald Trump in 147 days from today. Although early voting matters, and I know some of you are still reluctant and resistant. And if I have to say it 10 times a day till it gets through your thick heads that you can't start out election day hundreds of thousands of votes behind, I'm just going to keep reminding you, no, it's not the system I want. It's the system we're stuck with. However, you voting early, voting by mail, I can tell you it does work here in the free state of Florida, and they have perfected it. It's not perfected in other states, but you better pay attention to it, because if you start out hundreds of thousands of votes down, all of a sudden, yeah, you're leading on election day, and then as the days pass by, slowly that lead will erode away. And you want to start banking your votes. Look at what happened in George Santos's old district. That was my old district when I was stupid enough to live in New York. But when they had that special election, it snowed that day, and it happens to have a high elderly population in the area, and they didn't get to the polls that day because of the snow. And it's just awful. So you just got to prepare and go in early, and of course fight for voter integrity measures, voter identification, signature verification, voter ID, chain of custody controls, updated voter rolls, partisan observers watching the vote all day and the vote counting all night and the next day and the next day, depending on how long it goes on. But anyway, let me just go to this battle that has ensued where, believe it or not, and this first passed in New York City, although a court stopped it, and now it has gone to Washington, D.C., and now it seems to be becoming a movement, and that is that you literally have Democrats that are pushing to allow non-citizens to cast votes in the case of Washington, D.C., in local elections, which makes absolutely no sense at all whatsoever. But anyway, that's part of the battle that's going on. One Arizona politician, Ruben Gallego, and his track record, previously voted to allow non-citizens to vote in the D.C. elections, is insane to me. You didn't respect our laws, our borders, our sovereignty, and now you're going to get voting rights on top of it? Oh, so you can vote in politicians that will give you amnesty, something of great worth? It's crazy. Anyway, Kari Lake, this Senate seat matters. The balance of power in the U.S. Senate is hanging in the balance in this election in 147 days. Also, be nice if House Republicans could increase their majority. Anyway, Kari Lake is now the current Senate candidate for the Republicans. Great to have you back. How are you?
I'm doing great. You laid out a lot of some of the issues we're facing in Arizona. I mean, we've got to deal with the system we have. It's nowhere near perfect, not by a long shot, but got to play in this system, and that means we have to mail-in ballots, early voting, voting on election day, and then when we win, we can start reforming elections so that all voters, whether you're liberal, somewhere in the middle, or conservative, will feel confident and have faith in our systems again. But right now, we got to just vote in this horrible system we have and get out and vote and make it too big to rig, as President Trump says.
It looks like things have changed dramatically out in the state of Arizona and the state of Nevada, and maybe even New Mexico in the end will go the same way. But, we saw this in the early primary states. The number one issue by far has been the issue of Joe Biden's illegal immigrants. And the more that we learn about it, the more scary it becomes. Tens and tens of thousands of illegal immigrants coming from Iran and Syria and China and Russia and Yemen and Egypt and Afghanistan and Kazakhstan. We have over 10 million plus Joe Biden unvetted illegal immigrants in this country. And I have no doubt, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there are terror cells in this country plotting and planning and scheming an attack on this country. And we're not doing anything about it. He's allowed them in. He's aided and abetted in this.
It's a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. I mean, we know they have actually apprehended some terrorists along the border. Many others have gotten through, and it's just a phone call or text message away from wherever the terrorist organization is to get them triggered and activated here in America. Not to mention the actual criminals who poured out of prisons and, as President Trump says, mental institutions, and they've emptied them and sent them to America, taking their burden from other countries and putting that burden on us. I just read a story about a Texas father who came home to find his daughter dead. She had been sexually assaulted and murdered by an illegal immigrant who came here, was apprehended, and Joe Biden's system let him back out onto the streets, and he killed this Texas man's young daughter. I mean, this is a daily occurrence. I wish it were one in a million occurrence. It's a daily occurrence. It's only going to get worse. And we saw what happened across from the White House with all these pro-terrorist protesters who are pro-Hamas and pro-terrorism. And, you know, they're supporting this kind of insanity, chaos, and lawlessness on our streets. And it is a number one issue, but the border also, Sean, plays into the economy, which is also the number one issue. If you can have two number one issues, it's the economy and the border. And when we have 12 million people who Joe Biden has allowed to come into this country illegally, competing with Americans for housing, that drives the rent up, that drives the mortgages up, that drives everything up, and all of our services and all of our costs. At the same time, these 10, 12 million people are getting job permits because of Joe Biden, handing them out like candy, and that drives down the wages because these people will work for peanuts, and it makes it harder for the working class American just trying to get by when everything's more expensive, and the middle class, if there is such a thing anymore, because I think that Joe Biden has actually killed the middle class.
All right. So let me give you a series of headlines in the course of my research for today's show. One is from Fox Business. Nearly 2/3 of middle class Americans say they are struggling financially, quote, gasping for air and feeling pessimistic about their finances amid Joe's ongoing inflation. And again, year over year, the last 3 months were up 3.2%, 3.5%, 3.4%. Again, year over year on the issue of inflation. So I'm not expecting those, quote, rate cuts that everyone's been talking about. Then you look at a Zero Hedge article that came out. Oh, Wall Street admits the biggest economic shocker that all jobs in the past year have gone to illegal immigrants. And then there was a moment this weekend, not that anybody watches these stupid Sunday shows, but over on CBS, Margaret Brennan, was thrown for a loop when she saw a poll that showed 62% of Americans want all the people, Joe Biden's unvetted illegal immigrants, deported. What exactly do people think that they're supporting? It would be called the rule of law where I grew up. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the mainstream media is just finally catching wind of the fact that Americans are fed up. They can't take it anymore. I mean, just this last quarter, 600,000 jobs were created, according to Joe Biden, and those went to all foreign-born workers. And more than 400,000 jobs were lost, and those were lost by American-born workers. So Americans are losing their jobs. They are being replaced by people here illegally who will work for nothing. At the same time, we're watching the price of everything go up. At the same time, we're watching, crime soar on the streets, and it's all connected to Joe Biden's bad policies. It's dangerous times that we're in, and the only way to solve this is to vote these people out of office, and that's why this race in Arizona is so important. We want to make sure President Trump wins. We've got to have President Trump back in the White House. His good policies that made everyone's life easier and better. Even if you didn't like him, your life was better. But we can't deliver him a Chuck Schumer-controlled Senate, or it's going to be impossible for him to get things done. We must give him the Senate. We must get the Senate back. Ruben Gallego has talked repeatedly. Every time he goes on one of those silly Sunday shows that you just mentioned, he talks about what he wants to get rid of the filibuster for. He said he wanted to get rid of the filibuster a couple of years ago during the Summer of Love, the so-called Summer of Love. He wanted to get rid of the filibuster to pass the George Floyd legislation that would have defunded the police. He marched.
That's insane.
Police rallies. He supports sanctuary cities, called the border wall dumb and stupid, said he would never, ever, ever support funding the border wall. And, this is a guy.
Are the people of Arizona aware of this?
Well, we're trying to make them aware of it. And, and I'm running a good race. We're running a really good campaign, but we need to raise more money to alert the people of who he is, because the media is never going to tell the people of Arizona who he is. To the people of Arizona, he's just a generic name, a generic Democrat. And, of course, he's got Soros money behind him. The Soros family has endorsed him. And he's running soft and fluffy ads, making it look like he's Mr. Moderate, when he could not be further from a moderate. He is absolutely hinging on Marxist. And so we have to get out there and define him, and that's why I'm out there campaigning so hard and asking people to chip in $1, $5, or $10. I know it's hard in Joe Biden's economy to do that, but we have to get out and let the people know who he is, because they don't know who he is. And when they find out who Ruben Gallego is, they're going to want to run as fast as they can the other way.
All right, quick break. Right back. We'll continue more with Arizona Senate candidate Kari Lake is with us. We continue with Arizona Senate candidate Kari Lake is with us. Let me ask you about what's going on with Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs. According to FoxNews.com, under an investigation for this alleged pay-to-play scheme, and a report revealing that a group home company got a rate hike after they donated $400,000 to Hobbs and the state Democratic Party. Is she in trouble out there?
Well, we'll see. I mean, the AG who's investigating her is, in my opinion, shouldn't even be sitting in that office after the way they ran those elections. And, am I shocked by any of this? No. We saw how the elections were run, and Katie Hobbs ran the elections, and everybody around the country and practically around the globe saw how the elections in Arizona were run. And so would it shock me that she's doing something unethical, perhaps fraudulent? No, I'm not shocked. But the question is, can we get an honest investigation from the other politician, AG Mays, who shouldn't even be sitting in that office? So we got the convicts running the state right now, and we got to wonder if they can really do a good job in investigating people in their own party. So I don't hold out a lot of hope, but I think this is going to be just one instance that we see major minimum unethical behavior, possibly criminal behavior, at the hands of these people who are in charge of Arizona right now. And it's absolutely horrifying for the people of our state, because we're stuck, almost held hostage by a really bad, poorly run elections. And now we have people at the helm of our government who are unethical at the least and possibly criminal at the worst.
Well, thank God they changed that 1864 abortion law. I mean, I was beginning to worry about some of your fellow Republicans out there, whether they had any brains in their head, because that would have been a disaster had they not done that.
Well, I mean, the worst thing that would have happened there, obviously, I'm pro-life and I want to save as many babies as possible. And, you can save babies without necessarily changing laws. Look at what Hungary was able to do. They never changed a single law. They dropped the number of abortions in half by passing and pushing pro-family policy, encouraging people to have babies, encouraging an economy where you could afford to have babies, and actually with tax breaks. If you have 4 babies, if you're a woman who has 4 babies in Hungary, you never pay taxes again. They were watching their population collapse. They had a very low birth rate, and they said, we need to pick up the birth rate, which, by the way, we need to do here in America. The problem with having that law in the books was it would have ushered in this piece of voter initiative that's on the ballot in 147 days, which is written by Planned Parenthood, which will push the most extreme abortion laws in the country in Arizona. And if the people of Arizona only had to choose between the 1864 law and this Planned Parenthood voter initiative that would cement into our Arizona Constitution forever abortion up until 9 months and beyond, I'm afraid that might have passed. And now we have an option for voters. We have the old 15-week abortion law or the Planned Parenthood right up until the moment of birth and then beyond. So voters now have a choice, something that's more reasonable, and we also want to work to push forth policy to encourage parenthood, to encourage women when they find them.
Well, let me ask you this, because we're just running out of time. People want to learn more about your campaign. How do they do it?
Thank you, Sean. KariLake.com, KariLake.com. It's time for some common sense solutions. We can solve all the problems. We have the border crisis we can solve. We can solve the problem with crime on our streets. We can get our kids a great education, but we have to have the right people in office, people who are going to push forth common sense policies that put the citizens of our country first. That's what I plan to do. I ask for your vote if you're in Arizona, and if you can spare spare change or a few bucks here or there, help our campaign grow so that we can define Ruben Gallego and tell people who he really is and make sure we save our state and save our country.
All right, Kari Lake, always good to have you. We'll have you back. This is an important race, an important state.